fate of billions will depend upon you. Sorry. Next. Your soul is mine. I don't think so.
Hello, baby.
I am the chosen one. Enough!
This is where you fall down.
Get over here!
I'm looking for a murderer.
Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the WayBack Movies Podcast, a show where we review the best and not so best of 80s and 90s cinema, because really, fuck the 2000s. My name is Steve, and with me on this crazy journey,
Cousin.
Doctor. And we're back.
Coming in a little late.
A little late this week. Life gets in the way.
Sometimes it happens.
Yes.
Just means there'll be a quick turnaround between this movie and the next movie.
Yeah. So only a few more days, and then we're on to the next one. The older brother of this movie, if you will. So yes, as we mentioned last week, we are covering the mid-90s classic, Mortal Kombat.
I mean, all things considered, it still might be considered the best video game movie.
I mean, ironically, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, I think we were talking about this at one point. It's like, is there really... There's not really a good track record.
There's like this one and the one we're covering in next week in a couple days, and then it's just a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Because this... Listen, I'm not saying this is...
No.
I mean, we can maybe make an argument that this is the Citizen Kane of video game movies.
I mean, for lack of a better term, yes. But
if it's a dopey fighting video game that made a dopey fighting video game movie.
Yeah. It's weird, and, you know, we'll get into a little bit more about it as I go forward, but, yeah, this might be kind of the most faithful video game adaptation there is.
To the letter.
Even though it should be rated R, and it should be overtly violent.
Well, I mean, give that about 2 years?
Yeah.
2021?
Yeah.
It's funny that we're recording this, and they literally just started production. They started rolling cameras a few days ago on the new Mortal Kombat movie. I think James Wan's doing it.
Of course, I cover that in my notes here. But yeah, it's a very odd thing. But I guess with that being said, we're already kind of talking about it, so let's just jump in the WayBack Machine for August 18th, 1995 for Mortal Kombat. Okay, here we are, 1995. Ironically, I did not see this in theaters. I was very angry about that. I always wanted to, and I never did. I don't know why I never went, but I didn't go.
I didn't see it in theaters. I mean, we all played the games, right?
Yeah, of course. Apologies. Frog in my throat. So, like I said, Mortal Kombat, August 18th, 1995, directed by Paul Anderson. Not that one. Writer Kevin Droney, based on Mortal Kombat by Midway Games. Producer Lawrence Kazanoff. Production company Threshold Entertainment. Distributor New Line Cinema. Box office of $122.1 million against a budget of $18 million.
Profits.
That's successful.
Yep.
Which is one of the few times you can say this for video game adaptations. That's for damn sure.
Yep.
Not only successful, a hit. Which, again, can't say that to many of them. So the cast. Christopher Lambert as Lord Raiden. Robin Shou as Liu Kang. I'm going to say all of these wrong, by the way. Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung. Lyndon Ashby as Johnny Cage. Bridget Wilson as Sonya Blade. Talissa Soto as Princess Kitana. Trevor Goddard as Kano. Chris Casamassa as Scorpion. Francois Petit as Sub-Zero. Keith Cook as Reptile, and Kenneth Edwards as Art Lean. Don't know who the fuck that
Everybody's
is.
favorite Mortal Kombat character, Art Lee.
Oh, we'll get to fucking Art. Trust me. Jesus. So Mortal Kombat. Let's just talk about the game for a minute. The video game Mortal Kombat started development in 1991 with only 4 people. Ed Boon programming, John Tobias as art and story, John Vogel's graphics, and Dan Forden as sound design. It began as a ninja-based game, which was pitched by Tobias to his then-boss Boon and the rest of Midway, who rejected it. Midway was then approached to create a video game adaptation of the then-upcoming film Universal Soldier starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Tobias imagined a fighting game featuring a digitized version of Van Damme, intending to make the game a lot more hard edge, a little bit more serious, a little bit more like Enter the Dragon or Bloodsport than contemporary cartoonish-style fighting games of the time. Talks with the studio as well as Van Damme fell apart. Tobias and Boon decided to continue their project even after the deal to use the film license after the film license fell through. The first Mortal Kombat character, Johnny Cage, became a spoof of the whole Van Damme situation. After the success of Capcom's Street Fighter II: The World Warrior, it finally convinced Midway Games to let the team produce their own arcade fighting game, but there was not much influence by Street Fighter II in the actual project, according to Tobias, who cited 1984's Karate Champ as an actual inspiration. They even intentionally worked on making a game different than Capcom's title in every way.
I love Karate Champ so much.
That's a great game. I wish there was a real home adaptation. There never was one. I mean, there was one on the NES, but it was kind of crappy.
Yeah.
Using digitized characters filmed with human models as opposed to hand-drawn ones, as well as a very high amount of blood and violence, by way of fatalities, that after your opponent is defeated, you are able to very graphically dismember them. It was the violence of this game, as well as a few other titles, that led to the creation of the Electronic Software Ratings Board, or ESRB.
Boo.
No,
I
right.
know. It's not like the movies.
Ironically, most of the games that are involved in this were my favorite growing up.
I'm assuming most.
Doom is one of my favorite games ever, and that game literally was part of the reason.
It's like all the movies that caused the ratings board to happen, right?
Yep.
It's everyone's favorite movies because everyone loves, I don't know what that says about society. Or
yeah, pretty much.
Everyone's favorite games and movies are the violent ones.
Exactly. But... And Night Trap, which I've ironically still never played, yet if you look, it's over there for the Sega CD. I own it, and I've still never played it. But that was one of the other games.
They just reissued that recently.
They did. And it's actually the uncensored version, which is not what I have. Mine is slightly censored, because I have the Sega CD 32X version. I just wanted the weirdest copy I can possibly find in Sega CD 32X. There was like 4 people who owned both. And now I'm one of them. Capcom's senior director of communications later compared Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat by asking if the interviewer preferred the precision and depth of Street Fighter, the gore and comedy of Mortal Kombat, and also stated that the Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat rivalry was considered similar to the Coke and Pepsi rivalry of the 90s. It really was. It was literally like, which one do you prefer? And you had to be in your own camp. It's how it went.
I think it's calmed down over the years.
It certainly has.
People I don't pick.
No. I rarely ever did.
I mean, to be fair, my favorite fighting franchise isn't even either of these. It's King of Fighters. So.
Yeah, which...
And don't want to watch those movies, as they made a couple of those, and they're not good.
No, they're about on the same quality as that DOA movie that they made. Yeah. It was the success of this game as well as its sequel, simply titled Mortal Kombat 2, that prompted producers looking into making a film adaptation. The idea started when producer Larry Kasanoff was visiting friends at Midway Games in June 1993. He'd previously worked with James Cameron, turning Terminator 2 into a merchandising phenomenon. Among them was the record-breaking T2 arcade game for Midway. They showed Mortal Kombat, a new game that they said would beat his T2 record. He immediately envisioned it as a phenomenon on the order of T2. He saw a TV series, stage shows, albums, and movies all in its future. Midway thought this was nuts. Ironic.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Literally 2 years later, all of that would be true.
Yeah.
It took 3 months to convince them, but eventually they agreed. Ed Boon said, when the movie was being discussed, I remembered not taking it seriously at first. I thought, this is probably going to be talked about but not happen. Then all of a sudden, we were getting phone calls about casting. No one was ever convinced. Kasanoff remembers the studio head at New Line. Wait, what the hell? No one was ever... I don't know. The language is more... The studio head at New Line, who may have been our old friend Bob Shea, walked in with the script, threw it down on the table, and said, "I hate the script, I hate this movie." And he yelled at us for an hour and then said, "Go ahead and make it." Because that sounds about Bob Shaye as Bob Shaye you're ever going to get. The original screenplay for the film was more faithful to the game, in that it had graphic violence and strong language, making it an R-rated script. However, the deal that the producers had with New Line included that they deliver a PG-13 movie to keep the film accessible to the target audience, mostly teenagers. Which was true. Originally based on the first game in the series, there are several notable elements that were incorporated into the second game, such as Shao Kahn, Kitana, and Jax appearing, and other details. Shang Tsung being younger, and also in order to avoid the excessive makeup that would have been required to duplicate his aged appearance in the game. So, essentially, they just added a couple things from Mortal Kombat 2 into the movie just because they could, and it made life a little bit easier. The script was written and rewritten during production, with the humor being added as ad-libs by the actor, which Boone and Tobias didn't approve of at all. Paul W.S. Anderson, which is what he's actually known as, was hired because a producer saw a low-budget film he'd made called Shopping. He was a fan of the game and desperately wanted the job, but had no idea how to film special effects. So he bought and read any book he could find on it, and then so that he could sound knowledgeable in the meetings. I guess it worked. Sean Connery was the first choice to play Raiden. I fucking bet it was. But he turned it down.
I'm yours, yeah, I can't even do the fucking...
I am yours, Liu Kang.
I mean, to be fair, listen, we're talking about fucking out of race casting. I mean, he played a fucking Spaniard in...
He did. So, in all fairness,
Highlander.
I'd believe that he is a Chinese god. I would just somehow go with it.
Show Liu Kang. You've decided to fight for the...
Yes. You are going to fight them first, Mortal Kombat.
I mean, I guess ironically enough, they went with his co-star of Highlander.
Yeah, they went with the other guy. But of course, Sean Connery turned it down to play golf. Because
he's Scottish.
Mm-hmm. And Danny Glover was also considered. Sure.
Too old for this shit.
I'm too old for this combat shit. Christopher Lambert was supposed to do all his close-up shots in L.A. and a stand-in was going to be used for shots in Thailand. However, Lambert decided, screw it, I'm coming to Thailand. Because it sounds like Christopher Lambert is just an awesome dude. He also figured it would be better if he came along because it would just be a lot better that he could be in close-ups once or twice. You know, like you do. Russell Wong, Dustin Guyan, Keith Cook, Ernie Reyes Jr., and Philip Rhee all auditioned for the role of Liu Kang. I only recognize one of those names, and he was in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Yep.
Robin Shue originally turned down the opportunity to audition for the movie, assuming that he'd be cast as a stereotypical Asian villain. He reconsidered at the advice of his agent. Sharon Stone, Christina Applegate, and Dina Meyer were all considered for Sonya Blade.
Nope.
What?
I don't believe that for 1 second.
Nope. Bridget Wilson Sampras had read and auditioned for the part of Sonya several times, but due to the long casting process, she chose to do Billy Madison instead. Christina Applegate was also considered for the role, but Cameron Diaz was cast after the producer saw dailies of her from The Mask, another New Line Cinema film.
As in dailies, they saw the scene everyone remembers of her walking into the bank and going, her,
get that,
whatever. Put that in the movie.
Because is there a better entrance for a woman in a film ever?
Plus, seeing that's her first ever film?
Mm-hmm.
First ever scene?
Yeah. That's bravo, is all I can say on that one. However, she broke her wrist during a karate training session prior to shooting, and fortunately, filming on Billy Madison had just wrapped, making Wilson available again. She happily took the role, even though it meant she had to be flown to the set the next day, and had to train for the big fight scenes in between shooting the rest of the movie. Brandon Lee was the first choice to play Johnny Cage, but his death on the set of The Crow forced him to be recast. Jean-Claude Van Damme was offered the role, but he'd already begun preparations for Street Fighter. Gary Daniels, Tom Cruise, and Johnny Depp were also considered for the role. I bet they were. Chris Casamassa was hired to work as a stunt ninja at the audition. The producers were so impressed that he got the part of Scorpion. The voice was that of Ed Boon, who provides the voice in the game series. Ironically, Michael Jai White was slated for the role of Jax. Ultimately, he left in order to do Tyson. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yep.
Reptile's animal voice was provided by legendary voice actor Frank Welker, who also provided the voice of Shao Kahn. And if you listen to Shao Kahn...